I'm here with Patrick Nelson, Justice Democrat running in New York's 21st District. Dylan Radigan, also in the same race. So we got two progressives. But let's talk about the issues. As we mentioned before, we want to talk about climate change. There's a massive protest behind this, as you can see. Cuomo's inaction on climate change and his double talk where he says, we're going to ban fracking, but we're still going to put pipelines through here, and we're still going to have fracking facilities. People seem to be fed up. Can you talk about why you're here today?
Well, because it's the differentiation between the headlines that say things that we like and the actions that don't actually make the progress we want to make. Sure, by executive action, we've banned fracking, but that's not permanent. We need a legislative ban on fracking in New York State, and we also need to stop increasing the demand for the products of fracking. The CPP pipeline downstate. Why are we still investing money? Why are we still allowing the investment in fossil fuel infrastructure that not only hurts our environment, but is also economically inefficient?
You're talking about the one in Orange County?
That's correct. Yeah. So every dollar that we're investing in the continuation of fossil fuel infrastructure is a wasted dollar as we're trying to move to get off fossil fuels, ideally by 2035, at best case scenario 2050. Those power plants are going to be around for 30, for 40 years, and we want to have them shut down earlier than that. Right now, the most cost-effective place to invest in new energy is in renewables, solar and wind, and that cost curve is coming down faster than any other area of energy. So if we're going to be smart with our money, with our tax dollars, and with the investment in New York State, we should be investing in green, renewable energy. And by the way, it's also important to save the legacy of the human race on top of being good economic policy.
Yeah, I agree. So oftentimes they say, it's not good economics to not support natural gas or fracking, but it's really just about perpetuating all the already existing economic powers. It has nothing to do with economic growth. And you talked about legislatively the fact that New York State can't get anything done. Part of that is because there's still a Republican de facto majority with the IDC, which Governor Cuomo has enabled. So it's all this kind of trickle-down effect. Cynthia Nixon is here walking with the rest of the protests. Can you give your thoughts on the race? What issues stand out to you? Which candidacy aligns more with yours?
Well, right now it seems to be we've got a contest between experience and better ideas. So that's what I've heard from folks, is that the governor has 8 years of experience. And there's value in that, but at the same time, Cynthia Nixon has better policies on getting off fossil fuels by 2050. She's got better policies in terms of dealing with the opioid epidemic by legalizing cannabis, which we've seen in multiple studies actually reduces the rate of opioid addiction and overdose in the states that have gone recreational. So not only is it a criminal justice issue, it is also a healthcare issue. And every day that we go where we're not legalizing cannabis in the state of New York, it will cost lives in the opioid epidemic.
It also has racial components. So we're talking about environmental racism here. This power plant is being built in a poorer area, a minority area. And then we talk about the criminal justice issues with marijuana, how those have racist implications. Can you touch on the environmental racism here in this specific instance?
Well, we just walked from an area that's being proposed to become a frac gas power plant in a predominantly community of color. And this is why we need support for legislation at the federal level, like H.R. 3671, the Off Fossil Fuels for a Better Future Act, which is the first piece of true climate justice legislation that puts communities of color, low-income communities, Native American communities. Did you know that Native American reservations are 4% of the land in the United States? They are 25% of the Superfund sites, including 2 Superfund sites at the Akwesasne Reservation in the 21st Congressional District. So we're going to put communities of color, low-income communities, Native American communities, immigrant communities, and we need a just transition for fossil fuel workers as well, because it's not the workers' fault. It's the executives, it's the CEOs that have bought power in governments like New York, like Washington, D.C., that have prevented us from making progress on these issues. We need a just transition for those workers into new renewable energy jobs. We need to invest in low-income communities. But the Off Fossil Fuels Act puts those communities in charge of how we spend the money in that legislation. That's really where we're going to make progress and make change.
Speaking of corporations buying off our politicians, last question. You're a Justice Democrat, obviously running with no PAC money. So, we can see it right there.
No corporate contributions.
Can you talk about why you made that decision and why people should vote for you on June 26th in the 21st District in New York?
We have to lead by example on issues of campaign finance reform. We cannot trust people who are perpetuating a corrupt campaign finance system to then try and fix that corrupt campaign finance system that would help get them into power. So we have to make the decision as candidates not to accept corporate PAC and lobbyist money, and then keep that promise through the term in office, because things change when you get into power, and all of a sudden people want to give you money for re-election for favors they want today. And you need to remove yourself from that corruption, because guess what? We're all human beings. Okay, when somebody gives money to our campaign, average contribution $32, guess what? I like that person. I want to help that person. I want to listen to what that person has to say. And that's the same if they're sending $32 or $2,700. So the only way to remove the corruption from the system is to remove the politicians and the public officials from that corrupting influence. Because if you accept a check for $2,700 from somebody in the financial sector or somebody in the fossil fuel sector, guess what? You're going to like that person and you're going to want to listen to what that person has to say. It's not born from evil intention, this corrupt system. It's born from a very human urge to return favors.
Incentives.
Yes, which means you have to not accept the favor in the first place, so you have no favors to return.